thanks for joining me for the next 30 minutes. We're going to be chatting through some customer stories of some Axonify users that have fundamentally changed the way they onboard their new associates to really drive down those early attrition rates that a lot of us experience when we have new hires. So my name is Christine Tutssel. I'm the co-founder of Axonify. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just telling you what we do as a business so you have some context for that as I walk you through these customer stories. So Axonify is a frontline enablement solution. We're anchored in learning, so we fundamentally believe that the core of enabling associates to do their best work is they have to be adequately trained and onboarded and know the right things to do in the moment when they're serving your customers. And we root this in the brain science behind how you learn and retain information. So we believe in the process of delivering little bite-sized chunks of learning as opposed to long-form learning, and also reinforcing that learning over time. So the brain science behind this will tell you that you'll forget up to 90% of what you learn within 30 days unless you reinforce that over time. So we couple that reinforcement with the micro-learning concept up front in order to deliver this solution to our clients. We then layer on top of that communication, task management, and recognition as additional components that can be leveraged. But for today's purposes, we're going to be really focusing on how do we actually get these new hires that we bring into our business up to speed and get them out on the floor as quickly as possible so they can be as effective as possible. We work with a number of retailers around the globe, and one of our very first customers was Walmart, and that was almost 12 years ago. And they started working with us to drive long-term retention of safety information in their distribution centers. That relationship has evolved over time, where we really provide the glue for them to hold all their programs together in their DCs and keep their associates safe. At Foot Locker, they use us around the globe, and they call us Lace Up. So Foot Locker is a sneaker company, and what their employees say is clock in, lace up, and hit the floor. And that's how they kind of ingrain this ongoing learning and communications within the daily cycle of the striper, which is what they call their colleagues or their associates. And what they see across the board in America, they get about 95% of those associates signing on pretty much every day they come to work, and here in EMEA and APAC, they get about 89%. So I had one of my customers say to me once, I don't know about you, but if I get 90% of anything, that's a good thing. So this is a lot of attention that they're getting from their associates, and there's a lot of things you can do with that. So the challenges that we see out there in trying to onboard new associates are vast, and they are many. And one of the biggest ones is it's labor. It's the costly process to have your associates off the floor in a back room doing non-productive tasks on the floor. Also, how do we shrink that time to competency, get those folks up and running as quickly as we can, and get them out there to serve your customers and reduce this attrition rate? We've seen some of our customers go from up to 80% attrition within the first 90 days in stores down to 20%, which is pretty significant because that means you're saving that cost of recruitment and that cost of the initial onboarding. And we can't afford to take people off the floor. We need to use the things that they're used to using, like mobile phones. A lot of our associates are quite young and they want to use their phones to get the job done. We also work with Zebra, put it in local context. We work with Zebra, and many of our customers use that as their primary point of access to use Axonify. We're trying to close these knowledge gaps to get your associates more capable more quickly, and we want to give you data that you can measure and get insights into what's actually happening out there. Because in the old world of onboarding, all we knew is we checked the box, they finished their training. We didn't really know what they knew or how they were progressing, and we weren't giving any data back to the frontline managers. And as retailers, we have tons of data about everything to do with inventory in our supply chain. We have tons of data about our customers and their buying habits, but we don't have data about our associates and what they know, what they don't know, how they're performing on the job, what their behavioral attributes are while they're at work. So giving you insight into that will allow to coach and provide consistency across the board. And one of the topics that's top of mind for everybody right now is loss prevention and safety of your associates in the world that unfortunately we're living in today. So that's a key piece we need to address as well. So I'm going to walk through 4 customer stories here of how we approach to this modern way of onboarding. And we view it not as onboarding, but everboarding. One of my clients used that term the other day. She goes, we don't stop. It's always ongoing. There's always something to provide the associate or the colleague with. And it's also personalized to the user. How do we, if we only have a few minutes of day to interface with these individuals, how do we make it relevant? We better not be sending them something they don't need, that they already know. We need to send them something that's absolutely appropriate for them to upskill and do a better job every day. So focusing on the individual here is key, so we can scale across the enterprise and personalize the delivery. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how we personalize this experience. And so the one-size-fits-all approach to onboarding is a thing of the past. We need to focus on what do we need for each specific role within the organization. So Kroger is a client of ours, and they have about 500,000 associates across 2,800 stores, 35 states, 24 different banners. So it's a very complex organization, 50 distribution centers. And they were using more of a one-size-fits-all approach to learning. They had an e-learning solution where they're delivering long-form learning. They had Axonify delivering a consistent set of learning on Kroger principles and culture, and then reinforcement of the e-learning, and then they were doing on-the-job, role-specific training. And it just wasn't working. And what they find is they have a group of associates that have been with the business a long time, and then they have this other group that just keeps churning. And so they said, how do we address this churn? So they took a step back and they partnered with operations. So the leaders there on the associate training side worked very closely with store operations, and they said, what do we need to do to get our teams up to speed? So they said, based on your hire date, what do I need day 1? What do I need day 2? What do I need day 7, 14, 30, 60, 90? And they paced the learning out over time and started to drop in things that were most appropriate for those specific shifts. So the goal was, how quickly can I get my associate on the floor doing their job? And the first day, they really just need the basic compliance training that's going to allow them to get out there. And then we can start to layer things on each day and layer on top of that communications. So now we're telling the associate, hey, tomorrow you can expect to see this. So they're in the loop and they feel part of the team and they know what's coming, as opposed to being locked in a room and then getting out on the floor and not having anywhere to go to get support for what they're supposed to do the next day on the job. We also pulse check with them, give them quick little surveys, ask them how they're feeling, so we get the sentiment back and we can keep checking to make sure that they're engaging. And Kroger has seen they've just done this recently, and what they've seen in the stores where they've dropped it in is great feedback from the operators. They're really liking this new approach, and they're finding that now they can actually get these associates up to speed faster, and they're staying longer. So we don't have any data on the specifics on the reduction in attrition rate, but very, very great early signs. As well, they give a repository for the user to actually go in and, I need to know something, can I ask a question and get an answer returned to me so I know what to do? Because oftentimes an associate will go and they'll ask a question, they might ask someone that they're new to and they don't know. So we could be asking the wrong person and then 2 people are doing the wrong thing. So giving them a place to go to get those answers is really critical, and then keeping the comms going. So that's how Kroger approached it, and then layered in this ongoing reinforcement piece where now we're supporting them every day, asking them questions to make sure that we're driving that long-term knowledge of the things that they've learned in the previous days. And then in the background, AI is personalizing this delivery to make sure that, I get what I need and you get what you need, and it's not something that is one size fits all. So the second thing I want to talk about is the hybrid model. And here we're going to talk about Foot Locker. So Foot Locker did something similar to Kroger in that they partnered closely with operations. So Jen Baker is the head of learning and development there, and she went to her operations and said, what's happening here? We're losing way too many of our new associates in the first week to 2 weeks on the job. And people come to Foot Locker, and a lot of these new associates are just kids in high school, and they're like sneakerheads, and they want to sell shoes, and they want to get out there, and they're really excited about their job. And where do they end up? In this room all day, and then they go home with their friends and family, say, how was your first day on the job? And they go, I don't know. I sat in a room all day. I was bored out of my head. I don't even know if I want to go back. And so trying to look at it a different way. So what they did was they said, okay, what do we need on the first shift? So their first shift is a minimum of 4 hours, maximum 2 hours of learning, 2 hours on the floor. So if you go into a Foot Locker store, and I love doing this when I'm in New York at NRF, I go in and I say, hey, did you guys lace up today? And the associates in the store, they're excited and they're laughing and they've got their phones and they're going, hey, yeah, check this out. How do you know about lace up? And I'm like, oh, well, I founded the company behind lace up. They go, oh, you're the lace up lady. And they joke about that. And then when I was there in January, Dick Johnson, who is the former CEO, I had breakfast with him the following day, and he went in the same store I did. An hour later, they said, oh, the lace up lady was here, and they're just excited about what they're doing and how they're interacting. So that's what they want their associates to see their first day on the job. So just what is the minimalist training that needs to be delivered so they can legally get that person on the floor, that's what they do. The second day, they start to incorporate what's in it for me. So these stripers, they want to buy shoes. And what's my discount? What kind of a deal do I get because I work here? What's my benefit package? What's your wellness program? How are you going to support me? All of those types of things. So that's the training they deliver on the second shift. And then they start to layer in over time, their customer service program and how they interact with their clients and upskill the stripers on that type of training. But really trying to focus on the early side so they get them in and they hook them so they really want to work in this company and they enjoy it. And then that proceeds over the first 30 days. And again, they're doing this interval reinforcement questions every day to remind them of all the things they need to know. And then after 30 days, they open up what we call self-directed learning. So now I might want to pursue learning about something that's not part of my daily track. I can elect to sign up for something. Maybe I want to be an assistant store manager and I want to do additional learning. They can go in and elect to do that. And this is all delivered, pretty much 95% of the users do it on their mobile phone. And some of them do it inside work and some of them do it outside of work. And it's really, they sign a disclaimer just saying, like, I know I'm not on the clock, but I do want to do this learning. So that's the approach they've taken. It's been highly effective. And this is just a quote from Jen saying, like, really focus on the what's in it for me. And, not what's in it for Foot Locker, but what's in it for the associate, because if they do the right thing and they look after their employees, the employees are going to look after the customers. And then data. So we need to use data in the right way. And the world's really changed. So traditional onboarding, one and done, check the box, I've got a completion rate. In the new world, oh yes, I've completed my topic, but where's my knowledge today? Is my knowledge growing? Am I confident? If we have associates out there that know things, that are confident, they're not going to use that information to effectively deal with your customers. They need to have both. And the worst case scenario is they don't have knowledge and they're overconfident and they do the wrong thing and they upset a customer or they have a safety incident or something happens like that, which is not what we want. So looking at what that confidence is, trying to grow that over time, closing these knowledge gaps and personalizing that delivery so each person is getting exactly what they need to close their gaps. Also, are they reading the announcements? Are they interacting with the communications that we provided them so that we know that they're actually, participating and engaging with what's coming down from home office? And then, participation and frequency. We see some pretty incredible rates within our customer base. Kroger, who I mentioned earlier, 500,000 people 92% of them are interacting every day. And so that's incredible. What can you do with that? So they use a platform for all their sentiment analysis, and they were finding when they sent out their employee surveys that they weren't getting a response on them. They were getting very low return rates. So they started nudging the users, hey, did you go to this site and fill your survey? And they found in the first market area that they dropped those nudges into to remind their staff that they got a 50% return rate on that survey within the first week. So there's really great things you can do when you get that type of engagement. So we've got all these metrics, we've got all this data, what do we do with it? Well, we can identify who are your experts. Who are the people on the team across the stores that actually really know what they're doing in certain areas, and then you can pair them up with your new employees to make sure that they're being mentored by the right people, because we want to have that coaching, mentoring, peer relationship, buddy system, if you will, that's really driving the right result for the business. And supporting our managers. So we believe at Axonify that the frontline manager is really the most critical role in the organization. And we need to equip frontline managers with the right tools in order to effectively have conversations and that they understand what we're doing. So if you can imagine all of these retailers fundamentally changing the way they onboard their associates, we've got to inform the frontline managers of what we're doing. We also have a number of our customers that do behavior observations. And these behavior observations are allowing the retailers to understand, okay, they know it, but do they do it? And I think that's a super important thing. And some of our customers like Levi's, they do a ton of behavior observations of their stylists, looking at, are they doing the right things in the stores? Because they know certain behaviors drive certain business results on the back end and increase conversion rates. So they want to make sure that that's happening. So they're doing these observations, which are created as a byproduct of the learning. And then if they are not performing certain things automatically, the system will say, hey, you need more learning in this area to upskill, so that the manager can do the observation, but the system will take care of really trying to close the gap on an automatic basis. Celebrating performance. Let's give the managers data so they know that they can celebrate with their team members. And whether that's an anniversary or that's an accomplishment or something within the environment, we want to make sure people feel recognized and supported on a day-to-day basis. And then the manager's doing the same work, same training as the associates. So they really fundamentally understand what the experience is and how they're interacting. And if we can support these frontline managers like this, then I think what we've seen across the board is much better results with our customers. And then it doesn't stop there. It's not one and done. So Janice Lee is the Chief People Officer at Giant Eagle, which is a retail grocer in the Pittsburgh area. They've got about 35,000 associates in the business. And she's partnered very closely with operations to iterate and adjust on what's happening. And you don't get it right the first time. This is something you have to kind of keep working on, making those incremental adjustments. And so what Janice did when she first started at Giant Eagle, she went into a store and she went through the onboarding process. And she said to me, oh my goodness, like that really sucked. It was not good. And I've got to change this. If I'm like, I wouldn't work here if I had to go through that. So that set her about really fundamentally trying to change the way they were doing things. And so they've seen in some of their stores, they were losing 80% of their employees within the first 90 days. 80%. They're down to 20%. And across the board, their attrition rates have dropped from 60 to 30%. So that's saving them millions and millions of dollars a year in labor because they've been able to iterate and adjust and get this right for their associates. So in summary, you can see that there's kind of a common theme here. And the common theme is really that all of these retailers are reimagining how they're doing their onboarding. And it's now not a process of this long form, classroom-based or long form e-learning. It's really small, bite-sized chunks that they deliver spaced out over time, coupled with reinforcement. And it's pacing this progress. We don't need to teach them everything right away. Even if we do, they're going to forget. So let's pace it out over time, make sure that we treat them the way they want to learn. Everybody's attention spans are degrading by the day, and we just can't process stuff in a long-term basis. So we need to really give them small chunks and distribute it over time. Personalizing onboarding is also critical. We're working with some clients now on test out. So, if you have a new associate that's like I was talking about with Foot Locker, the brand new first job right in their high school student, they have one frame of reference. You hire somebody that used to work at a Nike store, they've already been selling sneakers, they know a lot about that. So can we test out instead of putting them through the learning? If they actually know what they're doing, why bother them with having to take that training again? Let's get them on to something that can help them accelerate. And then the partnership between operations and L&D is absolutely critical. We can't have learning, sitting in the back room, creating a bunch of training, pushing it out. The operators, you really need to drive what it is you need on the floor in terms of capability for those associates or colleagues to get the job done. And so this partnership is mission critical to successfully moving into this type of an onboarding environment. And then using the data, leverage the data to have the conversations so you can really scale what you're doing across the organization. And let's make it ongoing and iterative. So if you take one thing away from today, maybe that's everboarding, and that's something that we need to think about on a consistent basis, always happening over time. And I think what you'll find is that'll drive much better results for the business.